I had a plan. My plan was mom and dad, home, a daughter. My plan was never live on my own with my daughter. And so when it finally happened, it was scary in the sense of like, it's all on me now. Like, I have to provide for the house. I have to, my car. I have to figure all of this out by myself. There's no longer somebody else to kind of like shoot ideas off, like, how do we get through this together? And so for me, luckily, I've been somebody who's, well, not luckily, but I've been through a lot. And so I knew that I would get it together.
Build resilience.
Yes, absolutely. I knew that I was going to figure it out, that I wasn't going to, in a sense, feel like I failed. I knew that I was going to provide a home for us and have a job and all of that, the basic things that she needs. But the feeling of, you almost feel a little bit, I don't want to cry. You almost feel a little bit helpless to a certain extent, because I haven't been in this situation ever. This is my first time. And I don't have family here. So I really feel like I'm alone sometimes.
Thanks for watching the Love, Health, Prosperity podcast. And once again, this week we have a special guest that's going to talk to us a little bit about life and what happens when things get a little difficult, because it happens to every single person on this earth. There's no way that we can manage certain situations without the help of others. Sometimes we get inspired by what some people go through in life. And because of those type of things, we have to be bold and brave and be able to share certain situations that can pretty much sometimes spark inspiration in others. And today's guest will talk to us a little bit about that. Life can be very difficult, and it's going to throw curveballs at us all the time. But when we have guests like the ones that we have today, our special guest today, Ms. Karen, is going to talk to us a little bit about what she does to manage certain situations. And we want you guys to do the same thing as well. We're all humans, and sometimes we're in need of a little help out there. And sometimes watching someone talk about some of the things that they're going through really helps us gather our thoughts, get a plan of action in there, and just do what we have to do. Embrace vulnerability. Miss Karen, how are you today?
I'm doing well. A little nervous, but I'm doing well today. Yes.
So awesome that you're here today.
I'm very excited. I'm very happy to be here.
These are my favorite interviews. Let me tell you why. And I tell the staff this all the time too, because sometimes, when you have somebody who's just, wanting to make an impact in this world and saying to themselves, okay, so if I'm going through something difficult, then I think it's important to be able to kind of share that so that other people can hopefully get inspired. Yes. So I really admire that about you.
Thank you. I admire that about myself now. I never thought in a million years that I would have a podcast and that I would even be in a situation where I'm at right now, sitting in front of you, doing an interview. I never thought that I would be in a position like this. So I admire myself now.
So cool. I'm happy that you're saying that. So talk to us a little bit about that podcast.
Yes, it's called My Life, My Story, Embracing Vulnerability. And it's a podcast that I started after I got divorced. When I was going through that process, there was a lot going on in my head. And I actually started recording voice memos to myself as a way to journal. I'm not really good at writing down my thoughts. I feel like they come out too scrambled and they don't make sense. And so I just started talking to myself. And as I did those voice memos and I would listen to them in the future, I was learning things about myself. And I could see how I changed based on the things that I was saying in those memos. So I thought to myself, if this is helping me, my story can help other people. If I can see how much I'm growing through these experiences that I'm going through in that moment, maybe someone else can relate to me and see how I got through the other side. And maybe I can give them a little hope that they can also get through the other side.
That is so cool. And you're right. One of the things that sometimes in therapy, they ask you to journal or they ask you to write things down or to talk about certain situations. And I'm so happy that you've taken on being able to do that. And something that's really recommended and that tons of people have talked to us about, and that they can say, okay, because of this, and because I've jotted down certain ideas, and because I've let go of certain feelings, this has helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
What's been your experience since you started podcasting?
At first it was very scary. I was terrified of just what people would say or think about me, based on the things that I was saying. A lot of it is my truth, the things that I was going through, the things that I was feeling. So there's a lot of fear in opening yourself to the world like that. In one of my episodes, I did say it felt like I walked outside naked and everyone was staring at me. That's how it feels sometimes when I do certain episodes. So it's very scary. But after I do an episode, I feel so good. I feel like the weight is lifted off my shoulder. I feel happy. And so it's like a therapy session in a way for me. And I feel better after I do an episode. I feel just a lot lighter.
Tell us about some of the things that you went through that really helped you out now that you're doing what you're doing.
Like went through like the experiences.
Yes.
Or, okay, so I'm divorced now. And so that happened about 9 months ago. Obviously I never thought that I would be in that position where I'm going to get married and get divorced. So that experience itself was very difficult. It was a decision that did not come lightly for me. I really thought about it, and it was one of the harder things I've ever had to go through, because in a sense, you're breaking up your family when you really think about it, like logically, when you think about it in that way. There's obviously a lot of other things behind it, but when you just kind of lay it on paper, that's kind of what it looks like. So that was one thing I really struggled with, in that sense of like, I feel like I'm breaking up my family, but there's a reason for that.
How does this happen? Does it just happen gradually, or is it something that you saw coming?
It honestly was years in the making. I was in a situation where I stayed to give my daughter that nuclear family, what I've always dreamed of. And I never wanted to have separate households. I grew up in a very toxic household, so I wanted to give her mom and dad together. But it got to the point where mom and dad together is not healthy. And she's so little, I didn't want her to grow up thinking this is how relationships work, because this is what I saw all of my life. I decided it's better for her to see mom and dad separated and happy than for her to see mom and dad together and miserable, and her thinking that's how my husband should treat me in the future, or that's how I should treat my husband in the future. And so that was one major part of deciding to divorce. I just wanted her to have the chance to see happy relationships for mom and for dad. This wasn't just about me. I knew that he also wasn't happy to a certain extent.
So when you start seeing certain things that are happening in your relationship, what kind of measures do you start to take to see, okay, well, I'm identifying a couple of things that are dysfunctional in my relationship. Now, this is going out. This is a question that's kind of going out in general. What are some of the things that you noticed in your relationship that were danger signs?
Well, he was unfaithful to a certain extent in our relationship, and I was somebody who really wanted to make it work. So that's why I stayed for so long. I still was holding on to that thought of I want my daughter to have mom and dad. That was really my only motivation towards the end of like, I want her to have mom and dad together. We didn't communicate very well, to be honest. I feel like we were from, like, they say men are from Mars, women are from Venus. It really felt like
it's a good book, by the way.
It is a good book, but it really felt like that. It just felt like we were two people who did not understand each other. And through my podcast, I have expressed that I do think that we should have never been together that long. We were together 7 years. But I was going through a lot in myself that I thought I have to kind of stick this through. I'm already here. And I don't know his journey, but I know my journey. And so
your journey, and you've been talking about it and you've been documenting it. Let's go ahead and say it that way.
Yeah.
What did you learn off of doing that? What are some of the things that if you had a little time machine and go back to, what was not really working out, what would be some of the things that you would change in the relationship?
Oh my goodness.
I know it's a handful.
No, it's okay. Honestly, I would change a lot in myself. When I met him, I was young. I was about 25. So I was, I say I was in a desperation mode. I had this weird timeline in my head where I wanted to be married by a certain age, have a kid by a certain age. So when I met him, I was almost like, this is the person I'm going to do this with, because I have this timeline, and I'm lonely. I'm tired of trying to find love. It was very difficult. I was just not in a good headspace.
You think it was society's pressures, maybe?
It was my own pressure,
Your
to
own
be
pressure.
honest. I like I said, I've had a very like toxic childhood, and so I haven't really worked through a lot of those things back then. And I was trying to find like love in the wrong places. And I was in a period where I didn't love myself, and so I was trying to find it in other people. And so I'm fully aware that when we met, I wasn't in the best headspace. And as we continued the relationship, there were so many red flags. There were so many times that I told myself I should have left, but I never did.
For the sake of red flags, because people talk about red flags all the time. And I know there's just like red flags are different for everybody.
Yes.
What were some of the things that, for the listeners right now, what were some of the red flags that you saw that you identified right away?
Well, for one, he didn't show up for a lot of important things that he should have shown up for. That's to me a red flag. I feel like if you care about somebody and they ask you to be there, then you'll do everything in your power to be there. He chose not to show up in those situations. I did discover him talking to a lot of women on his phone very early on, and it was a pattern that continued through our relationship. And I just kind of thought, he'll stop. I had hope. I always had hope that he would change. And I think that's a red flag in me, that you can't expect people to change for you unless they want to. And I kind of always expected him to change because he said he loved me and we were together, and it just didn't happen.
Okay, so when it comes to the communication between you guys, how was that a daily communication for you guys?
Well, it was like day and night. We're so different. I'm a very emotional person. I feel things. I cry. And he's very hard to read, kind of like robotic in a sense of like, he's more of a person, if it happened in the past, why do you cry about it now? And like for me, I have a lot of issues with my dad. So when I used to cry about my dad, he never could understand why it was still something that hurt me to this day. Because in his mindset is like, it happened so long ago, why does it affect you now? And I'm like, well, because he's my father.
Yeah.
It's always, there's always going to be something there. And so it was little things like that. I just didn't feel like he understood me. And then I feel like I didn't understand him because I feel like he didn't give me that space to open up. So it was hard for us to connect.
Yeah. Connection is quite difficult with humans. There's so many factors that go into making a relationship work. You're right about what you said about being able to see certain patterns, right? But not only that, the pressure that sometimes you put on yourself to be in certain situations in life, sometimes that could be a little difficult.
Yes.
How is the family right now, being who you are, and going through life right now with your daughter, you had mentioned, how are things working out for you guys right now?
Honestly, it's going a lot better than I expected. I'm very blessed to be here in El Paso, where it's a city that I can afford to be a single mother.
You're originally from California.
California.
What part of California?
I grew up in like San Diego area, but I came from Riverside County, and I've lived in LA. I've lived like in different places, and so El Paso is affordable compared to California, and so I'm blessed that I'm here, that I'm able to be a single mom. Technically, it would have been very difficult to do that in California. And so it's been going a lot better than I thought it would. I was definitely terrified when we actually moved into separate households.
Please talk to me about that. that right there, I think a lot of people can relate to that. All of a sudden, being out there and having this plan, and then all of a sudden it's not there anymore. How do we put everything together again?
Yes, and I like how you said that, because I had a plan. My plan was mom and dad, home, a daughter. My plan was never live on my own with my daughter. And so when it finally happened, it was scary in the sense of like, it's all on me now. Like, I have to provide for the house. I have to my car. I have to figure all of this out by myself. There's no longer somebody else to kind of like shoot ideas off, like, how do we get through this together? And so for me, luckily, I've been somebody who's, well, not luckily, but I've been through a lot. And so I knew that I would get it together.
Build resilience.
Yes, absolutely. I knew that I was going to figure it out, that I wasn't going to, in a sense, feel like I failed. I knew that I was going to provide a home for us and have a job and all of that, the basic things that she needs. But the feeling of, you almost feel a little bit, I don't want to cry. You almost feel a little bit helpless to a certain extent, because I haven't been in this situation ever. This is my first time. And I don't have family here. So I really feel like I'm alone sometimes. And I have my friends that I call, and they're amazing. But being here in El Paso, I mean, I'm very lucky that the people are very friendly, and I love where I work. My coworkers are very nice, and they, but when you first have to do it on your own, it's just the fear. It's just a huge fear. You're just like, how?
It's major. And I know, Karen, because there are times where, as humans, you face a situation and you think, how am I gonna maneuver or navigate through this situation right here? Because for a lot of people that are on the outside looking in, they might be seeing it as well, it's just something that happens to everybody. They'll get over it. But when you're stuck in the moment and you're the one that has to make all those important choices, and you have to calculate every single thing that happens after that. Oof, it's like being in a whirlwind of all kinds of emotions, I would imagine. How did you manage all that?
And I like how you said, and also people only see what we show them. So obviously, like at work, people are going to see the happy Karen. They're not going to see the Karen that has a million thoughts in her head of how does she get through this. And so that's another reason why I started this podcast, because I know a lot of us are doing the same thing. We're going out there to the world, showing a certain face. Nobody knows what we're going through on the inside, what issues we're dealing with. And the podcast has really helped me get through a lot of these things. I feel like every time I go in, like it's been like a rough week. I'm like, can I just have a week where like nothing bad happens? And then, but it does help to talk about it. It's very difficult for me to ask for help.
Why is that?
Because growing up, I always was the one that was like the mother in the sense. I had to be an adult very young. And so I've discovered that I'm very type A. I have an issue with control sometimes.
Yeah, type A. Explain type A to people that are listening to this
I actually have
a
good example of it. My daughter had to go to the urgent care on Wednesday, and I was at work. So I had to have her dad take her. So if you're a type A, that's going to be extremely difficult to have someone else be in control of a situation. So I was at work and I was a nervous wreck because the whole time I wanted to leave and say, let me do it. But I thought to myself, I can't do everything. He needs to help in this situation. So this was a situation where it was okay for him to take over, and I have to be okay with that because he is her father and he eventually is going to have to take her at some point, so what a better time for him to learn what does he do in this situation, and him, have the control in that and not feel like I'm taking over all the time, because it's very, especially with my daughter, I want to be the one that's like in control of the situation.
Yeah, not only that, but I think one of the things I love that you say this also, because by just letting go, sometimes he becomes a better father also.
Absolutely.
He's like, okay, I got to deal with this. I got to take care of everything. I got to look at the timing. I have to look at every single thing that has to do with taking care of this situation right now.
Absolutely.
To the best of my abilities. And I have to look out for the best interest of my daughter.
Yes, absolutely.
So sometimes I know that's difficult.
It was so difficult at work. I just, like, every second I wanted to be like, that's it, I'm leaving. But I really had to talk to myself and say, this is an opportunity for him to, because I feel like if I would have told him, let me take over, I don't want him to feel like he thinks he's not doing a good job or he's not doing enough, because he's an amazing father. And I just was like, he can handle this. This is not an extremely difficult thing. He's able to figure out how to take her to urgent care, and everything that he needs to be done. So I was very proud of myself, not going to lie, because for me, it's very difficult to just let someone else take over. Especially when it comes to my daughter. I feel when you're a mom, it's just, it's your baby and you want to do everything you can for them. But I am very aware that I'm not always going to be able to be there. So if her father can be there, that's the next best thing if mom, can't be there. So I'm happy that I let go of control in that situation. I stayed at work and I wasn't, hounding him with like phone calls or anything. I knew he was capable of handling it. And it worked out in the end. She got to see the doctor and she got some medicine and she's doing better.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear. So when it comes to having those difficult conversations, sometimes when you're alone with your daughter, for example, and she asks a question, regarding, your relationship with her father, how do you manage those conversations? Can you think of a question that she's asked you that's kind of thrown a curveball at you where you say, oof, okay, is she old enough to understand? Or can I explain to her the situation?
She hasn't asked a question, but she does say, I want mommy and daddy together. And she's 3, so she hasn't, I don't think she's, and she was 2 when we separated, and started living separately. So I think she was very little to really realize, mom and dad are now separated. But she does make comments of, I want mommy and daddy together. So when she says things like that, it definitely tugs at my heart because I know that I can't give that to her. I can't give her, at the clinic was the first time in a year and a half that mom and dad were together. And it was only half an hour. And so when she does make those comments, I just remind her that, her dad lives in his home and mommy lives at her home and that she will see her father, when he picks her up. She does have photos in her room and they're newborn photos. So in one of the photos, her dad and I are together and I couldn't bring it down. I wanted to give her a reminder of, in a sense of mom and dad are together to a certain extent because you will always have us, but we might not be physically together, but you have that, and so she'll look at that sometimes and she'll say she wants mom and dad together. And so it breaks my heart because I know I can't give it to her, but I know that if she ever asks questions in the future, I will be honest, and I would hope that he's honest with her too, and he lets her know that I know that I tried as much as I could to make this work. And I hope that he's honest with his side of the story too. Obviously everything will be age appropriate. I'm not just gonna, when she's 5, tell her the whole truth on everything. But I really want her, if she ever asks, when she's a teenager, to know the truth, because then I also don't want her to get in a relationship like the one that I got in with her father. And knowing what I know and I don't tell her, I want her to kind of to learn. And so now that she's 3, she doesn't really ask, but that little comment, it breaks my heart.
I would imagine, because it's not an easy thing. It's
not.
Really not.
It's not.
So how important is communication now that you guys are not together as far as raising your daughter?
Honestly, it's very little. Growing up, my parents kind of used us as pawns. It was I have the custody, so I have the power. And so,
do you think that happens a lot with a lot of families right
absolutely,
now? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, especially the line of work that I'm in, I do see it a lot where to the parent, it's almost like a one-up on the other parent. I'm better than you because I have custody. Even though they might not be a better parent, they kind of have that sense of entitlement because they have custody. And that's kind of how my parents were. And we were old enough to understand what was going on. We weren't very little. And so we could feel it of it almost felt like you don't really love us or want us. You just want that physical paper that says you have.
And the line of work, I'm sorry, I don't want to drift away from that because I think that's important what you're saying, but the line of work that you're in right now.
I work at a courthouse, so I see a lot of different types of cases. And then also just interacting with the public, they tend to open up a lot to us. And so I hear a lot of different stories, and you can, based on what they say sometimes, you can tell that to them it's almost like a game, which is really sad because there's a physical person involved in this. It's a child. It's not just paperwork.
A lot of stuff. And it's so much that you're talking. I saw an interview with a lawyer who specializes in divorce and talks a lot about it. And he said something that really baffled my mind, which is totally on point. He says, when you buy a house, there's so many legal things that go into buying a house, so many documents that you have to read and sign and understand. in order for you to be able to say, okay, you got this loan, this is your house, and it's a lengthy process. And then all of a sudden, when we talk about, for example, like marriage and raising kids and all that, you just go to the courtroom and you just get a document, and
so easy.
Nobody explains to you nothing.
Nothing
having to do with how to communicate, nothing having to do with turmoil and how to. Yeah, there's premarital courses. I was giving those, but it was only a 2-day type of thing that I was giving couples, and that goes out the window a lot of times.
Yes.
The person that you marry, the person that you have when you're in the honeymoon phases, is not the same person when you're going through the separation. It changes a lot, and that goes for both guys and girls. And I think it's important to shed light onto that. But the reason why I'm saying that is because of the line of work that you're in right now. So you have you're at the courthouse, and I'm sure you've seen people that are very cordial, but then you've seen the latter.
Yes, you do see people who feel very entitled to a certain degree of like, you almost like we work for them, but we don't work for them. We work for the county, and so it's just about. I'm gonna help you no matter what. Just relax.
Yeah.
I'm not like, it's funny. My name's Karen, so a lot of people make jokes that like, am I a Karen? And I'm like,
I didn't want to go there, but now that you're saying it, okay.
No, and I'm like, I'm the farthest thing from a Karen. I'm very like chill, and so like we do see a lot, but we also see a lot of. It's very sad. A lot of people who don't know what to do. They're very desperate. They're very in a situation where they're just stuck. They can't afford an attorney, and they don't know how to do it themselves. And so it's a lot of different sides of it. And so working where I work, sometimes it's like a reminder of what I went through and what I was feeling in my divorce, because I can relate to them. A lot of them are getting divorced and they don't know what to do. And sometimes they cry. Sometimes they just tell you like everything that's happening that led to the divorce. And so I just listen because I know what it feels like to be on the other side.
And then life afterwards. I'm sure that's difficult also, right? What do you think is a major contributor to a lot of relationships right now working out?
I think working out, now after like, I was with my ex 7 years, and I've really reflected a lot on our relationship. I think it's a friendship. I think it's a solid foundation. I think what we tend to do is rush things, and because we want, and also I feel like especially now when it comes to dating, there's a lot about instant gratification, and you just want to get like the next hit from the next person.
What is instant gratification all about?
That
is very good. I like that.
From my experience, I mean, you have the dating apps, right? So you can talk to 20 people if you want to. So you get bored with one person, go to the next one. And then you get what you want out of them. You go to the next one. And so...
What are the side effects of that?
Oh my goodness. Well, I kind of went through that in a little period of that when I started dating. You feel really bad about yourself afterwards, because you start realizing that you're trying to find something in someone else that you're not going to find. And you can talk to 100 people and you might not find it, because you really need to take the time to learn more about yourself and find it in yourself. And I'm really learning that now. And when I was younger, I never understood that. To me, it was dumb. I'm like, I'll find it in a person.
And then you have people that say, okay, I'm looking for the right person. I'm looking for that prince or princess that's going to fill my voids, right? But what they fail to look at themselves in is, what can I do to become that person, that desirable person, right?
Absolutely.
That person that people look at and say, wow, what an individual. Hardworking, critical thinker, always making sure that they're on their A game. And those are hard things to do, but because of what you're talking about, instant gratification, that dopamine hit, I guess, being on your cell phone and looking all the matches, it's just very skewed.
Yes, and like in one of my episodes, it was, I actually talk about how it almost felt like an addiction, because like you said, it was a dopamine hit. Like I would match with somebody, go out, I was happy because I found somebody to go out with, but then I go home. What happens when I go home?
Yeah,
I feel crappy because I try to find happiness in someone else, not in myself or in my life, And so I took a big break from dating when I realized that I was using dating apps for the wrong reasons. It was more of like, who can I see next? You know,
How does a person know that they're using dating apps for the wrong reasons?
Oh
Karen?
my goodness. I feel like you really have to pay attention to how it makes you feel. For me, it triggered it because I was on a date and I honestly don't remember anything he said. Everything he was saying goes one ear out the other. And when I was sitting there and I was like, what am I doing here? I'm not even paying attention to what he's saying, because it was somebody that I had just started talking to, and then we met that night. So it was like an instant, again, like dopamine hit. So I'm sitting there and I realized I'm not listening to anything he's saying. Like, I honestly didn't care what he had to say. And that's why I wasn't listening. And that's when it hit me, like, this is not okay. It's not fair to another person who is actually out here looking for somebody to build with. And then they're sitting with me, somebody who's not listening to them. So that's when it hit me, like, I'm not doing this for the right reasons. I need to take a break, and I need to self-reflect on, why do I go on the apps? If, you know, am I doing this because I want to find somebody long-term, or if it's more like I'm bored with my life, let me go on the apps.
Okay, so what was your conclusions with that? Because you said a whole lot right there.
It was that I was using it to fill a void. I was lonely. I felt lonely, and I wanted some kind of connection. And so I was just going out. And so that's why I decided to take a very long break, because, again, I didn't want to put myself out there if I mentally wasn't ready to find somebody, because I don't think it's fair to the other person. There's another person involved in this. I would never want someone to go out with me and really like me, and then I tell them, oh, I'm sorry, I was bored at home and I went out and I don't really like you. That's very mean. And I didn't want to be put in that position. And so that's why I decided to take a break and really focus on myself and, you know, find things that I enjoy, so that when I am bored, go do what I enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. Make sure that you engage in things that really make you happy, for sure. And that are going to put you in a position where you feel proud of the things that you're doing, right?
Yes.
But what kind of advice do you give people right now that are in a relation? And there's so many people right now, so many people that are in relationships or marriages right now that are struggling, that are not fulfilling. What are some of the components that you would recommend for people that are watching right now to be like, okay, look, this is important. You guys need to make sure that you do A, B, and C. And I know it's different for everybody, but the simple notion and the simple fact that we're contributing something out to the airwaves right now, I think that's the most important thing.
I would say be honest with yourself. Really ask yourself, you know, are you here for the right reasons in that relationship? Are you really happy? Is this person really doing everything they can? Are you doing everything you can to, you know, to make this work? I think a lot of times, especially for me, we get comfortable and we just go through the motions because we're already there, or we invested so much time in something. But for me, the way I thought about it was, do I want to spend, you know, 20 years with somebody to eventually get divorced? And I knew that I should have done this so long ago. I didn't want to be put in that position. So I had to be very honest with myself. And, you know, just I want to say, like, think about your future. You know, I think we're so stuck on, we should enjoy the present, but we're so focused on what's happening now that sometimes we don't think about what our future can look like, because we're trying to make everything work right now, even though it's not working. Like, we are doing everything, but it's still not working. And so it can be very scary. I definitely very scary to think about leaving somebody that you've been with for so long and you've built with. But I feel like if you're very honest with yourself and you really truly feel like this is something that's not going to work. I didn't wake up and think I'm going to get divorced today. Like, for me, this was years in the making. And I didn't leave for so long because I was scared. I was scared to be on my own. And then I had my daughter, and I was like, well, now I have to stay for my daughter.
How old is your daughter now?
She's 3.
Okay.
And so I just thought, I can't continue like this for the rest of my life. I can't have my daughter see her mom be so unhappy and always wonder, why is mom not happy? And then maybe her think it's her and it has nothing to do with her. And so I think, just think about if you have children, think about what you want them to see, what you want them to experience. For me, it always goes back to, I want the best for my daughter. I want to give her the absolute best. And if it meant that mom and dad are not together anymore so that she can experience healthy relationships on both ends, then I'm willing to do that because I want to give her the absolute best.
That is good. That's golden. What you're saying right there. So what are, if your daughter, she's only 3 right now, but as she gets older, what are the components that you say, okay, this is a healthy relationship. This is what you need to have. These are the elements.
That's good. I want to say definitely number one for me is somebody who gives you that space to feel. I never had that in my relationships. I've always had people who kind of made me suppress my emotions, and I never felt like I had a safe space to even cry sometimes. And so I would tell her, if he's somebody that lets you express how you're feeling and he doesn't shut you down, he doesn't tell you you're wrong, he doesn't tell you that you should feel this way, he just lets you feel what you're feeling and he comforts you, that's a green flag. You know, if you have somebody who has patience, we're not perfect and we're gonna make mistakes. Like for me right now, I know that when I eventually get into a relationship, I need somebody to be patient with me because I've only had unhealthy relationships, so I don't know how to be in a healthy relationship.
Patience is a big thing. Yeah, definitely.
I might make a lot of mistakes because I'm learning, you know, so I feel like patience, and like with my past relationship, he wasn't very patient with me, and I could feel that, you know, you can feel when somebody just doesn't have the time or the energy for you. And so for me the biggest thing is somebody that holds that space for you and how you feel and your thoughts. Just, you know, you're able to express yourself and not feel like someone's going to judge you or tell you you're wrong. They're just going to listen. Maybe you guys can talk, you know, give each other feedback. I think that's very important.
Yeah, the communication's everything, right? How do you feel about like respect in a relationship? The importance of setting boundaries.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that for me, I've never been good at.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm learning now. And I do think it's very important because for me, for example, I never set boundaries in the very beginning. So they were always being crossed and I always allowed it. And I never expressed, this is my boundary. And then when it got to the point where I wanted to express it, it was almost like, well, you've let me get away with it for so long.
Yes.
You know? And so that's
or this is how you met me. This is the way,
exactly.
I've always been this way.
Yes.
So why all of a sudden is it a problem now?
Yes, absolutely. And
have you heard that before?
And that's exactly the situation I was in.
I mean, in other people.
No.
Particularly with you.
I haven't not yet, but that's very true, you know, and that's why it's very important to set those early on. And it's something that I'm learning to do now of, if in this, especially being in the dating world, if somebody's doing something that I'm not okay with, setting that boundary. And if they walk away, let them go. That just means that that person is not meant to be in your life. If they're not going to respect your boundary, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that you really brought that up. When I work with couples, because I do a lot of couples coaching, I talk to them about the importance of communication. I talk to them about the importance of making time for one another and really being able to express what really bothers you, because a lot of people bottle things up. They don't like to talk about certain things because what if they get mad at me?
Yes.
Or what if this is going to cause a problem? Or, you know, I want to take the relationship to the next level and they're not ready to do it. And I don't want to pressure them or whatever the case might be. But communication is always a very, very important thing that pops up for sure.
Yes. And I agree with everything you just said, because I'm that person of like, I don't want to say anything because what if they don't agree or they get upset? And I'm learning that in one of my episodes, I said, you're never too much for the right person. The right person's going to open that space for you and hold that space for your thoughts and your feelings. And you're going to feel comfortable to come to them with your thoughts and your feelings. And so that's what I'm working towards when I get into another relationship. I want it to be like that. I don't want to be, you know, somebody who lets people get away with a lot of things because I'm scared that they might think I'm being too much or doing too much. Well said.
And that's the reason why I go back to that, what I was sharing with you right now. That whole thing, don't worry about finding the right person. Focus on becoming the right person yourself.
Yes.
What does this mean? What does it mean to be the right person? Well, get it together. What are some of the things that you would like to see that you can make improvements on with your life?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And that's what I've been doing in the last year and a half. It's been a journey of a lot of self-growth. When I was younger, I didn't really care for that. I didn't really see the point of it. I thought it was okay.
And a lot of it, you said, because, you know, the household that you were raised in also.
Yes. And I was so focused on providing. I mean, I've always, helped my mom with rent for as long as I can remember. And so I didn't really, in my head, have time to focus on other things. And so it was now until I got divorced that like I said, I know I'm not perfect. So I really took the time to what are my red flags? What can I work on so that I can also be a better partner to someone else? Because I don't want to be the same Karen.
What you were talking about, Karen, like helping out with your family, things that, that you move on to the, your relationship, but you're actually on survival mode.
And I was for so long. And when I met him, I thought, this is somebody that I can help me and I don't have to be in survival mode that much. But unfortunately, to a certain extent, I still had to be in survival mode because he wasn't 100% in it the way that I was.
Yeah, I would imagine that is hard. So when you gather all your information and talk on your podcast, and which they're very, very interesting, and I must say, because we have to talk a little bit about your podcast, that your voice projects very well. So I think it's really awesome. And I think that giving people the opportunity to see who you are on YouTube, of course, is also a very, very good thing too. But I think I heard in that last podcast that you talked a little bit about speed dating. What was that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I actually did it last night.
Talk to us about that experience.
It was a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it. It was my second time. It's very well set up. And they do 5 minutes and the men rotate. It was a packed house. Like there were so many people there. I want to say like 50 people in total. And to me, it's better than the apps because you kind of get that talking to each other out of the way. It's more like they're in front of you. You get a sense of who they are. And then it's very safe the way they set it up. If you both say yes to each other, then the woman gets the man's number and it's up to us if we want to.
You guys have to make the phone call.
Yeah, so we have to communicate. So that also puts us in a different position because women are so used to like men make the first move. And so like in this position, like it's like if you want it, you have to kind of like start that, open that door. Yes,
That's interesting.
Yeah, so and I like that. And so it was a lot of fun. I'm trying to get my coworkers to come with me next time. And I'm like, I love people. I love getting to know. And I'm very much in the mindset of, even if nothing comes out of this, it's a new experience that I put myself in. The last year and a half, I've been doing a lot of things that I've never done before. And so speed dating was one of them. And so I enjoy it. It's fun.
It was good. It was a good experience.
It was. I very much recommend it for anybody who's single and you just kind of want to.
Let me ask you this question now that you're on that train of thought. Okay, so you have a young lady who just got divorced, or man, and they're wanting to go out there and meet somebody. What must they first know? How do they know if they're ready? That's my question.
I mean, for me, I knew I was ready because I honestly, my relationship for me was over so long ago. I was just kind of going through the motions of everyday life. So I knew I was ready because I already knew that my marriage was done a long time ago. Obviously, I was still married, so I wasn't going to go out there and date. Yeah. And so, but I would say, I want to say, as long as you know in your heart that you have good intentions going out there, then I think you might be ready. If you know you're going to go out there and kind of just not be nice and be in the dating world where you're just going to meet with people and then have the intention of never seeing them or speaking to them again because you're just hurt, then I don't recommend it. I don't recommend going out there when you still feel a lot of hurt because you're going to hurt people.
Yes. So therapy's probably a good thing.
Definitely. Right? And I did do therapy myself through the separation process. And then pretty much almost right up to the divorce, I did do therapy myself, and it really helped a lot to work through a lot of my feelings. Because I thought I wasn't angry at some point, and then through therapy, it was like, you are a little bit angry. You're holding on to some anger and some resentment. And so I definitely did do therapy before I jumped into the dating world because I didn't want to go out there, somebody who was so hurt and broken, and then, usually, like I said, hurt people.
Yes.
I didn't want to do that.
I like that you use that phrase because it is true, and it's gaining a lot of popularity. it is right when somebody has deep wounds, then they tend to kind of leave them on somebody else as well. They leave that impression. I want to thank you for all the things that you've shared with us today, because I think that this was very beneficial. A lot of people will look at this podcast and be like, I can definitely identify with some of the talking points here. At the same time, we always have a segment in our episodes where we give the microphone to you, and then I want for you to give somebody advice and information and encouragement for someone who's in a situation that's similar to yours, that's probably watching this, that I identify so much with Karen. I'd like for you to talk to that person.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I guess what I want to say is, I know everybody says this, but keep fighting and do everything that you can in your power to keep going. I know that you're going to have moments where you just feel so defeated and you feel like the world keeps kicking you down and you don't know how to get back up. I want to say keep going, because in all honesty, there is light at the end of that tunnel that you're going through. And it might take some time to see that light, but there is light. And I know that you all will get through whatever you're going through. If you listen to my podcast, I'm somebody that has been through a lot of different things in my life. And I'm here and I'm fighting, and I will continue to fight and find ways to be happy and continue going in this life that I know can get really hard sometimes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. And we thank you for being on the show once again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. So for the people that are watching right now, we want to thank you guys for watching. We also want to encourage you to support our pages. If you guys like the content that we're putting out, please check out all the announcements that we have with this video that comes with being able to support a channel like this, because what we're doing is we're trying to get this message out there for positive mental health, family cohesiveness, and being able to embrace your lifestyle as well. That's also very important. And if you're having issues in your relationship with communication, you could always reach out to us as well. We can provide a service for you that will help you out also. We thank you guys for watching the Love, Health, and Prosperity podcast. And we'd like to thank Karen again for being on our show today. We'll see you guys next week.